At the end of the second week, I posted some notes about what was said about students with mild intellectual disability and developmental disability. But in the third week, there was just one more thought that I wanted to share. And it was about the conversation around whether the regular class or smaller class would benefit the students most. And it really just depends on the student and the classes that are available. As teachers, we just want to do the most we can so that students can learn to the best of their ability. If the regular class is not too big and overwhelming, and the teacher is organized, has a built-in, inclusive, safe environment, and organizes small group instruction effectively, it can possibly work out in the student's favor. But if the opposite holds true, and the regular class is not very well organized, and it may be noisy, it would be a good idea to have this student in a smaller class environment and then join the bigger class for subjects like GEM, art, music, maybe even social studies and science. And that way they have the benefit of that small class to get all their academics and instruction, and then they can go into the regular class to meet with those students as well for other subjects. In week 3, we talked a lot about gifted students. We talked about the following characteristics. Some people said that gifted students might become complacent or unmotivated when they are not given the opportunity to work with their intellectual peers. There are gifted students who are highly motivated, and there are gifted students who probably don't care too much to work on school-related activities. We talked a lot about underachieving gifted students, and someone mentioned that in their class currently they have a student that is being put forth to the next round of testing for gifted identification, and if he is deemed exceptional, he would be considered an underachieving gifted student. Someone else said that they think an interesting and challenging characteristic of a student that is gifted is that they are sensitive to criticism. Gifted students have the potential to achieve beyond their same-age peers, but may not. The idea that underachievement might change due to relationships with the teacher, interests, physical health, emotional needs, etc., is one to consider. Some children intentionally underplay their potential because they don't want to be singled out. Gifted learners often have other exceptionalities that are not identified because of their giftedness. There can be learning disabilities, autism, etc. Some strategies that were mentioned that can be used are to bring in guest speakers or visiting a museum or workplace, since that would be a great way to engage the student deemed gifted. We need flexibility, communication, addressing skill deficits, and creative programming to support children who are gifted to fulfill their potential. Someone mentioned that they believe it is important to provide students who are gifted with the opportunities to interact with their intellectual peers. Finally, giving gifted students higher thinking assignments and other individual assignments will stretch their thinking. Also, it is important to consider that sometimes it is not the quantity of the work that we give the students, but the quality of giving them something that's interesting and something that they're passionate about. In the eTivity for behavior exceptionalities, we looked at 3 different behavior exceptionalities. The first one, conduct disorder, some of you said that students with this disorder repeatedly violate the personal and property rights of others and basic expectations of society. Also, it is important to note that evidence from some of these characteristics does not always signify that a student has conduct disorder. The frequency, intensity, or duration of the behaviors must be taken into account. Also, beware of your own triggers to avoid engaging the child in negative interactions. You can use the do rather than the don't requests. Then there was attention deficit disorder, and many of you chose this one to look at. It's a disorder characterized by either significant difficulties of inattention or hyperactivity and impulsiveness, or a combination of the two. The characteristics are listed in 3 different categories: inattention, hyperactivity, impulsiveness. Someone said that we need to establish and communicate consistent behavioral expectations and consequences. Sometimes students with this disorder can't concentrate, sit still, or stay organized. They bounce from one activity to the other. They have poor self-regulation. Sometimes they're not listening when you speak to them directly. And they may have difficulty making and keeping a schedule for assignments and activities. It seems that boys are 3 times more likely to be affected than girls. However, girls may be at a higher risk for more psychological impairment. The final one, oppositional defiance disorder, was characterized as a recurrent pattern of negative, defiant, disobedient, and hostile behavior toward authority figures that persists for at least 6 months. There can be frequent anger and resentment, defiance, and refusal to comply with adult rules and requests. And they seem to argue a lot. Some of the strategies that came up here were that there was a strategy to pull them aside and talk to them privately about their actions. Never confront them head-on in front of the class. Students diagnosed with ODD benefit from cognitive behavioral therapy. There was some talk about where that can be offered in terms of the school and who can offer it. And I had listed that usually it's a psychologist that can give the therapy, and it's not normally given within the school environment. Another strategy is to have consistent routines and manage transitions with organization. Provide a quiet space which the child can choose to use. Help the child use self-talk and help the student manage frustration or agitation so that he can gain some self-control and establish quiet space which the student can use to do this. Establish clear classroom rules and be clear about what is not negotiable. Finally, one other strategy that was used was the first and then strategy. When a student has completed the designated amount of non-preferred activity, you can reinforce cooperation with a preferred activity.